There's a lot more people coming out of the woodwork now than ever before, and I think it's partly because they're listening to witnesses tell their own stories.
Oh, I agree. Like, people, especially older ones, have been afraid to speak up. And hearing people speak, it's really believable. Like, when they tell their story, you know it's not made up.
Bemm River.
Yeah, it's pretty wild down there. There's only one road in, and it's just surrounded by bush. And there's a beautiful big river that flows out there at the sea, and it's just the banks of that river are just wild, you know. It hasn't been logged for years.
What year did your experience occur?
Would have been about 2007, I reckon.
Do you have a time of year?
Late summer. It would have been probably about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe a little bit later.
Run through the experience and I'll come back later with a few questions.
Well, we were just driving into Bemm River. We've come around a bend. The person driving said, "What the F's that?" Like, really surprised. And I looked up where he was looking and saw this huge Yowie just standing there looking at us. Our eyes met. That was amazing. He was just looking with the most curious, like, cheeky look on his face, like a teenager. You know, might look a rebellious teenager, like, yeah, I'm looking, you know. He wasn't big, broad, like a lot of the ones they talk about. He was more solid, but not as thickly built, but about 8 feet tall nonetheless, with really gingery golden hair, like probably about 4 inches long, just covered. And his face was kind of flat, but not monkey looking, like more human looking, but with a big jaw. The thing that got me was his forehead was just tall, like he had this really high, double the human size forehead that went up to this really domed head, you know, hairy, but he was just standing still there with his arms down by his side, quite long arms, just looking.
Who was driving the car?
My ex-boyfriend.
What sort of car was it, do you remember?
Commodore, probably 80s Commodore.
At what distance did you first see this creature?
Probably about 15, 20 metres. Not that far. He was just standing in amongst the trees up on a bank.
On the left or right-hand side?
On the left.
How far off the road was it?
I'd say about 15 metres.
Was it covered in bush between the road and where he was standing?
No, it was quite open forest, so I could see him from head to toe quite clearly, just standing amongst the trees there.
Now, you said you noticed a facial expression when you were coming along. You mentioned he had cheeky eyes.
He had a little bit of a cheeky look on his mouth too, like he was kind of, you know how a rebellious teenager might look? But also curious. He was as interested in looking at us as I was at him. Like, it's just so cheeky. I think he might have been a teenager, actually.
If you had put an age on him, what age would you say?
Oh, I would say maybe 14. Don't know. They might mature quicker than us. So
if he's 8 foot as a teenager, I'd hate to see him as an adult.
Yes.
You're saying that, he had a long forehead and he had I think you said dome-shaped head?
Yeah.
Did the head seem to sit directly on the shoulders like you hear in so many Yowie reports, or was it evidence of a neck?
No, I think he had a little bit of a neck.
You also mentioned in the report that he roared?
Oh, that was a different time, but it was in very close to where he was, so possibly his family group or wherever we were down at the Bemm River, which where he was standing would only be a few hundred metres away from where the roar was.
He's covered in hair from head to toe.
Yep.
Was there any more or less hair on the face?
Maybe a little bit less, I'd say, yeah. Not as long around his eyes and that.
Was the hair on the head any longer than the rest of the body?
No, not really, no.
And the colour was a goldy ginger.
Yeah, just sort of browny, but with a reddish goldy tinge, like it wasn't quite ginger.
The overall look of the body, was it muscular or was it thin?
Yeah, muscular, but not really bulked out like the Hulk, just like a footy player or something. Like he looks strong.
Are we talking rugby league or AFL?
AFL.
What did it most resemble? Was it more like an ape or a human or a Neanderthal?
Didn't look ape-like to me. It just looked like a hairy human.
Was that the body or the face or both?
The body and the face, perhaps a primitive human though.
Which would indicate more leaning towards a Neanderthal.
Yeah.
Can you go into the attributes of the face, such as the eyes and the nose?
I know he had a fairly heavy brow ridge and deep set eyes. Don't think there was much of it was a bit of a flat nose, wide mouth, not much lips, but it was kind of his mouth. He was kind of sneering, like not sneering, but just the way his mouth was kind of sullen looking, and a big jaw.
The arms you mentioned they're long, but in proportion.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Well, they seem to be very long. His arms, like hanging down, longer than a human's arms. Big hands.
Was the hair the same all over the body, or was it more sparse in certain areas?
It seemed to be pretty much the same. He had plenty on the front of him. I could only see him from the front, but there seemed to be plenty of hair everywhere, yeah. It would have been 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
How did you feel at the time when you saw him?
Just shocked. Like, we didn't even speak for the rest of the trip to Bemm. Like, we just sat there. And when I tried to talk to my boyfriend about it, he didn't want to talk at all. He was just, he didn't want to go there. I was just shocked. It was like when you see a UFO, you just go into shock. You don't expect to see that.
You say there's one road into Bemm River. Where on this road did this occur?
Well, there's one part on the road where there's a few bends. It's mostly fairly straight, but then as you get closer, there's these few bends. One track off to the left, it was before that track. And that is the track that we went down to the river and had the other encounter down there.
Tell me about this other encounter.
We went down there fishing and took my little daughter, and it's really steep, like it's very steep. A struggle to get your car in and out.
Is this before or after your sighting?
The sighting came later, a few weeks later. We went down for a swim, and you sort of have to climb down this steep bank and help each other down. And there's a small island about the size of a double bed just off the bank, I'd say 3 feet off the bank. It has like a little trees on it, little tea trees, like a little house, inside, and all flattened out, and it really stank. We were sort of sitting on the edge, and it got a bit stinky, and we moved. It smelt really musty. Something sleeping there and left a smell. The 2 guys that were there made a rock, piled all rocks up to make the water, because the water's quite fast, and so my little daughter had somewhere safe to swim. And then we left, and a couple of days later we decided to go back. And when we got back, the rocks had all been moved, and there was no sign of no other tyre tracks in there. Because it's so difficult to go down. I don't think anyone would use it much. The other thing was the whole time we were there, you could really strong feeling of being watched. You could just feel it. Something was watching us. A few days later, my boyfriend said, let's go night fishing down there because I bet there's good fish, So we've gone in the car. It was quite a dark night. And when we pulled up, it was turned the lights of the car off and and it was really dark. And we're sitting there thinking, I think this might be a bit of a crazy idea, like, will we go back, And just then, it would have been standing right at the front of the car because it was so loud. There was this almighty roar, huge, loud noise. I reckon it sounded like a cross between a lion and a kind of screechy, possumy noise, like a really unusual noise, but loud. Whatever made it was huge. He immediately turned the car on and spun the wheels and was out of there. We were so freaky. So, I tried to see if I could see anything, but the car spun around too fast. I reckon it was just at the front of the car. It sounded like it was standing right directly in front of the car, like it was so loud. Because we were inside a car with the windows up. So, yeah, no, it was loud.
That's close.
Oh, yeah, that is close. And I'm kind of, I don't know whether I'm glad I didn't see it or not. But
how did that make you feel?
Frightened the hell out of me, because you could tell it was something huge that could make such a loud noise. Yeah, no, it was loud. I think it's good to share. I've just learnt so much from listening to your videos that I feel like I know a hell of a lot more about Yowies now and what their habits are and what they do, you know. I loved that one where the young girl was playing with the young Yowie. That was fantastic. It just shows that they can be quite gentle, and they probably would communicate with us if we were open to it.
The majority of reports we have in that region generally stem from just over the northern New South Wales border to the north or over the border to the northeast. Also in Victoria, up towards the Alpine region. One of the closest reports we have to Bemm River is from Goongarra.
I've watched that one twice, yeah.
2016 audio report number 101, and that was one of my favourites actually. Poor Sam who had that experience. I think he's still getting over it.
It's really wild bush all the way up that road, and it's very windy, so it doesn't get logged or anything much around that road because it's so steep.
One of the most interesting aspects of that report, and the thing that freaked him out the most, is that its eyes blinked sideways like a reptilian. I'm not quite sure if I left that in the edit or not. I may not have.
No, you didn't.
We had 3 reports of eyes blinking sideways.
That's unusual, yeah, and the speed that it could run, that is amazing.
3 weeks later, he had another one. We haven't put this one up yet. He had another one, exactly the same thing happened, except 2 states away. It happened in Miles in Queensland. So it came from right to left. He'd lost some tools out of the back of his ute. He'd gone back into this pine plantation in the middle of the night to try and find where this toolbox or whatever it was that he dropped off the back of his ute. Lo and behold, here it comes again, deja vu, Groundhog Day. From right to left, here comes this creature, and it's running, and it comes right out in front of the car. He said, "Do you think I braked?" No. And he clipped it with the left-hand side of his bull bar. He said, "Do you think I was going to stop?" I've learned after the last experience only a few weeks earlier, I kept going, and I drove all the way back to town.
The true story is really interesting, and just the way they're told, and it's real. Keep up the good work.